Looking into the Municipal Act of Ontario, the definition section, municipality, and it reads as follows: means a geographic area whose inhabitants are incorporated. So you live in a municipality, you live in a city, and you consider yourself an inhabitant of that municipality, then guess what? Guess what their statutory law has done? It has incorporated you into the municipality. In this same enactment, right, it tells us what a municipality is. It says in this act, a reference to a municipality is a reference to its geographical area or secondary to the municipal corporation as the context requires. So when you mention municipality, you can either be talking about the landmass or you can be talking about the corporate body that the municipality is formed under. Well, let's go see. Let's go see what the enactment says concerning the people, the inhabitants that are living on the geographical location. Let's see what happens in this statutory power. Article 4, right? It says the inhabitants. So you who are listening to this, if you live in a municipality of Ontario or any municipality in Canada, it works the same way. You, the inhabitants of every municipality, are incorporated as a body corporate. Whoa. So what's it saying? You've been incorporated as a body corporate. Now let's look at that word, incorporate. To incorporate something, to unite or work into something already existent, so as to form an indistinguishable whole, to blend or combine thoroughly, to form into a legal corporation, to admit to membership in a corporate body. So what's it saying here? What's the statutory power saying? That you've been worked into something already existent, so as to form an indistinguishable whole, to admit to membership in a corporate body, to blend or combine thoroughly. Thoroughly. The municipality is a corporate body, a body corporate, and we, the inhabitants, have been blended into, have been brought into the corporate body. We've been incorporated thereof. Well, if we're brought into a corporate body, right, then we're operating as officers of that corporation. And if we're officers of a corporation, right, then the executive powers of that corporate body would rule and control over us. And that's what we see, right? The executive powers of the municipality continually trying to apply their rules and bylaws and regulations against the inhabitants, against their officers, right? Not inhabitants anymore, but officers. So they make up bylaws and they claim their statutory powers. And they say, because you're incorporated into our corporate body and we're the executive power and we've made up the rules, now because you're an officer, you have to follow us and obey us. And if you don't, we're going to penalize you. City of Ottawa Act, Incorporation, Article 2. The inhabitants of the municipal area are constituted as a body corporate under the name City of Ottawa. So here again, you're seeing the inhabitants are constituted or brought in or incorporated into the body corporate as a body corporate. And what's that body corporate's name? City of Ottawa. City of Hamilton, Incorporation. The inhabitants of the municipal area are constituted as a body corporate under the name City of Hamilton. So the body corporate is called City of Hamilton, and the inhabitants have been incorporated into that body corporate. Remember the Municipal Act, right? It said a reference to a municipality either means a reference to the geographical area or to the body corporate. And here we're seeing that when we look at these municipalities, every municipality is recognized as a body corporate, and all the inhabitants on their territory have been incorporated into that body corporate. We're seeing this in the statutory powers, right? That the local municipalities, they're all considered corporations in law. And the inhabitants, the individuals living on the territory, have been incorporated into the corporate body. And because they've been incorporated into the corporate body, they are now officers of the corporation. Now, we would expect to see the same operation of law in other areas of law. So we look to the Criminal Code of Canada, right? And we find the definition of municipality. And look what it says. Municipality includes the corporation of a city. Oh, just like we saw in the statutory power, right? Just like we saw in those enactments, right? The incorporation of a city, town, village, county, township, parish, or other territory or local division, the inhabitants of which are incorporated. So there's the operation of law again. The inhabitants are incorporated. Well, incorporated into what? Incorporated into the corporation. And that's the legal operation of law. That's the link that they're using to apply a control and a ruling mechanism against you as an individual. Because you are incorporated into their corporate body, you are therefore under the control of their executive power. The Criminal Code of Canada, Interpretation Section, Article 83.1. We're looking at the word and the definition of Canadian here in the Criminal Code. And look how it's defined. It says Canadian means a Canadian citizen, okay? A permanent resident, or a body corporate, incorporated and continued under the laws of Canada or a province. Now let me ask you a question, and let me see if you can catch it. That latter part of this definition, right? The last part, where it reads, or a body corporate, incorporated and continued under the laws of Canada or a province. Can you be included in that definition? Do you fall into that definition? We're jumping over to the Manitoba enactment, municipal enactment, and it's the same thing for every province again. But I found a good definition here that works together. When the legislators wrote this up, I guess they didn't have me on their mind. And I'm not saying that in pride, but when I went to look for certain definitions, this page came out beautifully to teach you guys about what's going on here. All right, let's read this word together. Resident, right, means a person whose ordinary place of residence is within the municipality. All right, so we know already from what we learned tonight that municipality can mean one or two things, right? It can mean a geographical location, or it can mean a body corporate. And they're not telling us here what municipality means. They're just stating it. But let's look at that definition again. It says resident means a person. All right, well, who are they talking about? What subject or player are they bringing forth here? It didn't say inhabitant, right? We saw that before we were incorporated into the corporate body, law recognized us as inhabitants. That was the subject or player. But now here, when it's defining the word resident, it's not using inhabitant, but it's using the definition of person. And that definition of person does not refer to us in our natural capacity. That definition of person is strictly referring to a statutory creature. When you look down a little bit, and it says taxpayer means a person. All right, so the statutory person is the taxpayer. The statutory creature is the taxpayer. Look down a bit more. Voter means a person. All right, so the person is a statutory creature, designated voter. Look down just a little more. Youth member means a person. So the person is a statutory creature called youth member. Now we go back up to resident, right? And means a person whose ordinary place of residence is within the municipality. All right, so if we know that the word person is referring to a statutory creature, so the person here, designated resident, is within the municipality. And that municipality has to be the corporate body. Because in order to be part of a corporate body, right, you have to operate as a statutory creature. Every time you define yourself as a resident who has a residence in the municipality, you're defining yourself as a statutory creature. You're defining yourself as the officer incorporated into the corporate body. That's what this law is doing to you. That's what their words are doing to you. and they're hoping you don't understand what they're saying, and they're hoping you don't understand what they're doing. So if you ever find yourself in court, right, or you've been given a ticket, notice on the ticket, it's going to say that your residence or your resident at, and they'll put your civil address. And the court will say, John Doe, resident at 123 Main Street. And they're trying to get you to agree to that by saying that you're resident, because then you're agreeing to the fact that you're operating as an officer in the corporate body. You're operating as that statutory creature, as that person, as that resident within the municipality. Now when you look, right, a doctor or a nurse, they have their residency in hospitals. They're considered a resident to the hospital. When you go to university, right, and you're going to rent a room, you're considered to be resident in the university, and you have a residence in the university. And that's the exact same thing that they're doing to us here. So they're taking us out of our designation of inhabitants. An inhabitant is something that's a natural designation, right? Animals inhabit the land. Fish inhabit the water. We, as men and women, inhabit the land. They take us out of that definition and they put us into the definition of a statutory creature, being officer, being incorporated into their corporate body. And then when they further use the term resident and residence, they're referring to a specific operation of law. They're not referring to a geographical location, a landmass. They're referring to the corporate body and your position within that corporate body. Municipality Act of Ontario, Article 4. The inhabitants of every municipality are incorporated as a body corporate, right? And when you become incorporated as a body corporate, you're no longer an inhabitant. You are now a statutory creature. Now it depends how you are interacting with the local municipality. You can be considered a taxpayer. You can be considered an owner. You can be considered the officer. There's many roles that they get you to play under their statutory powers. But the most important thing that we need to realize is that when we live in any municipality, all across our provinces, when they look at us, when the law looks at us, they do not see us under our full legal capacity. They see us only as statutory creatures, and it starts in these enactments. It starts when they take away our designation of inhabitant, our natural designation, and they incorporate us into their corporate body. And the first designation that we fall under then is officer of the corporate body. And just like you'd be an officer at another corporate body, there's rules and regulations that you must follow. The executive power of that corporate body will set up the rules and the regulations for their corporation, and you must follow them, with risk of being penalized if you don't. And it's the same thing here. The bylaws and the subsequent statutory enactments that are given force of law, and then they try to apply them against you, they're using that operation of law to try and yoke you and put the burden upon you and say, well, because you've been incorporated into the body corporate, we have the right to control your actions. And we have some laws here that says that you can and cannot do this. And therefore, you owe that obligation.
I hope you enjoyed this video. You can go to eternallyaware.com to find more information. You can also support this channel and the producer at eternallyaware.com. Oh no, I just called him a statutory creature. I take that back. Mr. Eternally Aware. Oh man, I did it again.